Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching or listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. Today we're going to be providing another installation into our U.S. Constitutional Amendment series going on number 25. So if you haven't gone back and watched 1 through 24, I would encourage you to do so because I'm sure it goes without saying that understanding the U.S. Constitution in its totality, that's all 7 articles, all 10 articles to the Bill of Rights, and Amendments 1 through 17, or the 17 amendments, is going to be very beneficial to you whenever any sort of lawfare attacks are going to be waged against you, your family, or your property. Understanding the U.S. Constitution in totality will be very beneficial in fending off or defending against those attacks. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump on over to the U.S. Constitution. Like I was saying, we're going over number 25 today. Amendment 25. It was passed by Congress July 6, 1965, and ratified February 10th, 1967, and it says this. Section 1. In case of the removal of the President from office or of his death or resignation, the Vice President shall become President. Do take note. I believe it's in Article 2. Yes, it actually says right here. Article 2, and I think there's another section in one of the other articles, that provides for the succession of power. This did not need to be added. There was already a succession of power, which actually included prescribing a time to vote for a replacement. Section 2. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the Vice President, the President shall nominate a Vice President who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. Section 3. Whenever the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting President. Section 4. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers or of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the Executive Department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session, within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office. So again, it's another one of those, like the 24th Amendment, that you don't necessarily have to have at the forefront of your mind 24/7 and understand the God-given liberties that are prescribed to you by God and then acknowledged and guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. So it's not one of those frequently cited amendments. However, understanding it is very crucial, very important, not just because it amends one of the preceding articles or clauses and sections of the U.S. Constitution, but also because it radically reforms the succession of power and provides a lot of legalese and ambiguous avenues that a politician, a wicked-hearted individual, can exploit in order to gain and garner more and more power. So while it's not necessarily impacting you individually by a day-to-day basis, it's very beneficial to know, very beneficial to understand. They're yet again restructuring, the reframing of the purpose of the U.S. Constitution of the Union in general. So because it's lengthy, we're not going to read through it a second time. However, I would encourage you to do so. If there was any point that you kind of got lost in the weeds, got lost in the bushes, go ahead, reread it, and clarify. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and call it there, make it another short lecture. If you do have any questions about what is said in Amendment 25 or any of the preceding amendments, if there's a topic in the past that you have questions about, or maybe a topic in the future you'd like me to cover, go ahead and post all of that in the comments, because the entire purpose of the Calhoun School of Law is to equip you with the necessary skills and knowledge to fend off or combat this ever-growing hostile lawfare state that will come to harass you, your family, or your property. And I want you to understand this information so that you can successfully defend against any of those lawfare attacks. So one last time, if you have any questions at all, please post them in the comments so I can serve that purpose exceptionally rather than insufficiently. Excellent. So my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope y'all enjoyed the lecture. If not, make that another comment in the section below. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. I'm not sure what the topic for the next lecture is going to be, but I'll do my best to make it as informative and entertaining as possible, or as entertaining as this one, if not more so, again, to best serve that ultimate purpose. I hope y'all have a wonderful day again. And until the next lecture, regardless of the topic, there we go. I bid you all farewell.